Go. 4, 5, 6. I should count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, you guys, it is the ASC webinar series. We are on number 34. We have our amazing theme for the month of June 2022 being aliveness. And today we are going to talk about doing what makes you feel alive. And Rebekka is going to facilitate this webinar. I'm here to do, and then Gary is hiding in the chat and doing some of our background tech. So we can wave a virtual hello to him. But yeah, I just feel like this is such good timing for this theme, because for me personally, I have felt like the pandemic has had me hiding under a little tiny rock for a very long time. And I spent a lot of last month, trying to dig out of from under the rock or out of my hole. And I just feel like there's this, I don't know, with the summer, it's like 99 degrees outside here in Chicago. I just feel like there's so much like energy and excitement that I have right now. And so I'm really excited to hear, Rebekka, what you are going to share today. And so thank you so much for helping facilitate this.
Yeah, it's always my pleasure. And to your point, it's time, it's summer. There's a lot of different energy I feel this time of year. And it's just one of those, not just the seasonal shift, but then we've got like the people stuff of school ends. And we've got like kind of the Memorial Day kickoff weekend where people, I find, also take that as like a chance to reclaim themselves or shift gears or what have you. So since last month's theme was the breakthrough theme, to me, it also brings up, when I think of a breakthrough, not that we have to have a breakdown, but there is that like, okay, the breakdown leads to the breakthrough. So if you think for yourself, when we've had like breakthrough moments in life, a lot of times there's some challenge that comes before it. Then we have the breakthrough. So then here we are in this energy post breakthrough month, theme-wise, into this new aliveness and freed energy and longer days for most of us, depending on where you live. And this idea of aliveness. And so aliveness, what makes you feel alive? And I'd love to just, while I still have you here, Apryl, ask you just that real loose question of what makes you feel alive? What have you been noticing, whether it's currently or just like big life picture for you? What are some things that make you feel like extra, what's the opposite of live is death. So what are the things that make you feel just like,
yeah, and this is so great, because I don't know if you saw me and Gary's last quickie, which was talking about what makes us feel like. We literally just went through a exercise of kind of reflecting on, in certain areas of our life, what makes us feel alive. So I think we talked about family, what makes us, or was it work, play? Gary, you might have to chime in on, because I can't remember, but there were 4 areas, and we reflected and had it was like work, fun, relationships, and growth. That's what it was. And so it was really, really nice to just like sit there and outwardly say these things that bring us life. And I think for me right now in this moment, what makes me feel alive is this upcoming trip that Gary is taking. I'm taking, going to be in Portland for 8 days. There is the anxiety of leaving my day to day and hoping that they survive without me, which they will. But, knowing that I'm taking myself out of that, but there's just going to be so much opportunity for me to step back out. I feel like there's a lot of things that I have cleared off my plate so that I can be open to new things, or I can be open to the things that I've been putting off because I've been so overwhelmed. And I think that lack of overwhelm is definitely what's giving me a lot of life right now. And yeah, so that's it. How about you?
Yeah. So aliveness, like being by the Pacific and just craving outdoors time. I've always said I'm an outdoors person, but it kind of fazed me lately, where it helps that I live in a place where I can just like have the windows open and feel kind of half outside all the time. But I had not been to the beach. I had not been to the ocean. So just yesterday, it was starting, and I'll kind of share more on this as I get going with the rest of the webinar, but I was starting to feel like bothered. Like a part of me was feeling really like, why am I not going to the ocean? Because it's something that makes me feel alive. And why am I not letting myself have that? So yesterday I went and did that. I actually got in the ocean, and moving from Florida to here, it's like still figuring out, like the water temp is different, but people are like not wearing wetsuits. Some are, but I got in without a wetsuit, and it was like cold, freezing cold. It felt like at first, but then that just like brought this whole different sense of aliveness to me physically. But then because every layer is connected, I was like just alive, like in every cell, every part of me. So I'd say the ocean, outdoors, and anytime I can like be in my body in sort of an energizing way, that tends to feed to aliveness. But I also have to say that last week I had my first in-person speaking gig. I've started teaching yoga, which that hasn't given me the same feeling as like being in front of a group of, I think it was like 70 women, and just how alive I do feel in those moments of just attentiveness and presence. And so kind of similar to what you'll probably get at WDS, of just like people just like wanting to be in this thing and listening and getting to then speak and share like what's so true and real to me. So that also has been a big like reminder of aliveness just last week of, I like talking to like big groups and being in that energy. So
yeah, I love that. And I'm noticing we've got our man Terry is live. So hey Terry, just shouting out to you. And there might be a few other people who come and see this live. But if you are also watching this on the replay, either in the ASC or somebody who is just stumbling upon this webinar during YouTube or on YouTube, welcome. And we encourage you to really think about, as we move forward with the content of this webinar, to think about the things in your life that make you feel alive. They could be something happening at work. It could be something that's happening in your personal relationships. Think about that as we continue on. So Rebekka, I might just send it your way and let you take the lead from here, unless you have any questions.
Fine, that's good. And
I'm excited.
See you later. See you on the other side.
Yeah.
So aliveness, I picked the theme. It's why I'm here, partly why I'm here. And I realized as I was thinking of, well, what to do for this month's webinar, what would make sense. And what I've noticed here too, just in this transitional time of shifting gears into summer, there's sort of been not a lack of showing up, but there's just a lot kind of going on, and people are juggling a lot and excited, getting ready for trips, or kids are out of school and routines are shifting. And I thought, maybe like a little less of the standard like Q&A webinar-y thing, and instead just taking this as a chance to slow down, self-reflect. That's always important, but especially when I think transition is happening, and we're still moving through just constant change. Always, it's never going to end. And just taking a safe moment here to like kind of hit time out for the next 40 minutes or whatever, and just really, get what you can get out of this experience of, can I just like be in a little container, a little bubble, and just really check in with like what feels, important right now. What do I want to kind of leave in the past? What do I want to pull forward into the future, especially with like feeling alive? And so anyway, before I get ahead of myself, like welcome Terry, welcome anybody else, Apryl and Gary, of course. And as I shared is in the intro, last month was breakthrough theme, and breakthroughs, freeing up energy. And so I know for me, when I experience like a breakthrough moment, a lot of times it begins with some sort of resistance thing. And then I'm able to move through, have the breakthrough. And then that feels expansive. And at some point I did a webinar that was more about kind of that expansiveness. And so feeling that as aliveness. And when we get into the energetics of this sort of thing, which is my thing, my forte here, the mind, the body, the spirit, there's energy within all of that. So whether you're feeling like this alive, when you hear the word alive, whether it's a physical feeling that comes up, whether it's an actual like physical thing you're doing that makes you feel alive, it could just be a state of mind. It could just be a state of perception or reflection, even that isn't necessarily, involving the body, but then you do feel it in your body, because the nervous system is also that circuitry that blends the outer world with the inner world, the mind with the body, body with the mind. So today we're going to go through some self-reflection, and I would play some music though. April reminded me that YouTube likes to flag you if you use some music. So I'll provide a playlist and I'll put it in the comments once this gets reposted. So if you do feel like that would help the vibe, music makes me feel alive. If you're in the ASC, I posted one of my favorite, like literal alive songs of Michael Franti's I'm Alive. So maybe you play some music like that that's upbeat. Maybe you put something on that's a little more calming, soothing, meditative, reflective. So if you want to do that right now, if you're watching live, go do that. Also know that if you're on the replay, do it now and check the links. I'll put some music that I like in there, or just silence, or just letting your ears go to whatever sounds are present. I have the windows open. I can hear kids playing at summer school, which is another form of aliveness, that joyous sound of just play. And slowing things down and landing here in this moment, I'd like to also begin with just a little bit of a centering. So if you would like to close your eyes, I'll close my eyes. You could gaze out the window. You could gaze at something that makes you feel more here, and just letting yourself settle into your seat, feeling how you're situated, where you're situated. And if you can feel your feet, whether you're sitting on them or if you can let your feet press into the floor, and just feeling, oh yeah, I've got this body, I'm here, I'm on this chair. And then sitting up a little bit straighter, a little bit taller, letting the shoulders roll away from your ears, maybe taking a couple shoulder rolls, and then getting to a place where you feel arrived. And as you breathe, getting a sense of the breath, whether it feels slow, quick, if there's anything that you'd like to shift within your breath, whether it is slowing things down. Exhaling, making a little sound. And while motion and movement of life is constant, even within the body, there's constant movement and change, you can still feel this energy of slowing down, of stillness, of being present in this moment. And asking yourself that simple, big question of what makes you feel alive? What makes you feel most alive? And going with the first answer that comes up. There's no real deep meaning to the word aliveness other than that it is being alive, the opposite of death, being alive, feeling life, feeling lively and vibrant. What makes you feel alive? First answer coming up. And in this moment, if it's available to even picture yourself doing the thing or feeling yourself doing the thing, or maybe like fly on the wall, just seeing it from afar, watching the activity take place. Maybe like you're watching a movie, seeing it all play out, and then noticing the emotions that might come up too of aliveness. And from here, slowly taking the time to come back into this virtual space. If you want to open your eyes, you open the eyes. If you want to keep them closed this whole time, you could keep them closed. If you'd like to journal and jot some stuff down, I definitely recommend that. If that feels like, oh yeah, maybe I should do that, like do it, grab a pen, grab a piece of paper, and just listing out, what makes you feel alive, what emotions came up. I know when I did this for, well, probably wasn't the first time, but a very direct memory of doing this activity was years ago. And I thought for sure that it would be something like sort of what I shared earlier of being like in nature and running and this. And then the words that came up were like teaching yoga in front of a lot of people. And at the time I had just finished being an ambassador for Lululemon, and I got to teach some big groups of people. And I was like, oh, that's what makes me feel alive. And it wasn't really the answer I thought. So, when you went through that yourself just now, be okay if there were things you're like, what? Like laying on the floor playing with my dog makes me feel more alive than like skydiving? It could. So there's no right or wrong. It doesn't need to be like extreme aliveness, but it could be. And there could be more than one thing. So just taking a moment, I'll be quiet and just letting these other things ripple through too. So like the first thing that came up, and then also the other stuff that came up, and just feeling each of them and just feeling the aliveness that's in those thoughts, that's in those memories. And if you happen to want to type them in, you could type them in, or just keep them for yourself. And if you're watching the replay, you can always hit pause if you want even more time. I don't know who said it first, but there's that whole meme and quote and thing of what makes you feel alive, or do what makes you feel alive. And I've seen that stuff through the years. And so then comes the question of, are you doing those things that make you feel alive? Because it's one thing to think them and use them as a resource, get a little energetic boost, maybe a little smile comes to your face and you think of like, oh yeah, that makes me feel alive. And then if it's something that you can do, doing it and asking yourself, well, why have I not been doing this? Kind of like what I shared at the beginning with Apryl. I realized that I was feeling just a little stuck. And then I finally landed on this thing. I mean, I moved out here because for years I imagined the Pacific Ocean, and then it's right there. And I'm not letting myself go sit and watch the waves or listen to the waves or put my feet in the waves. It's like, oh, that feels like there's something there that I need to break through. And so if you ask yourself, well, you know, if you haven't been doing the things that came up in that very brief meditative centering, okay, first, why? And this is your time. This is your bubble to get really truthful with yourself. Why have you not? And I'm a blamer. I've had to really face that. Like, I want to blame out. If something's not, you know, there. It's like, well, surely I didn't mess up. Like that is an initial part of my brain, but I know better. I know that I'm responsible for basically every part of my life and day. And so there's usually something that I can be doing about the thing. So immediately when I ask myself, why haven't I been going to the water or ocean? It's like, well, I've been so busy and there's this, and I have to do that for that person and that for that. It's like, okay, why haven't I been going to the ocean? Well, I haven't been prioritizing it. I've been letting myself just give into the day to day, and that part of me that is the doer and the person that needs to like be busy and be productive. And it's like, wait, that is getting in the way of the water time, the ocean time. So it's also figuring out what needs to going back to like the breakthrough piece. Where are you feeling a little resistance or chaos? What needs to be kind of poked through resistance wise so that you can take a move towards the aliveness. So although you might be like, yes, this makes me feel alive, now asking yourself, have you been experiencing it, or is there something in the way? So if you'd like to take just a minute or two to reflect or even journal on, you know, maybe it's making a commitment, I'm going to go to the ocean more often, or maybe it is like, why haven't I been going to the ocean? That's the thing that makes me feel alive. Why haven't I been doing it? And just noticing what might come up there. You need some more time. Replayers, pause it. Those of you live, jot down some immediate notes you don't want to forget. So as I kind of ping pong and weave around in these, you know, the big umbrella here is aliveness. But then beneath aliveness, you know, there's like the doing piece, there's the actual experiencing, there's, well, what's getting in the way of experiencing? And then how do you make a commitment to do more? And there's this bothness that I've been exploring lately. And part of this is coming through in the nervous system, like trauma healing work that I've been studying of, you know, our capacity in our being to experience aliveness, to actually feel that natural vitality that is there for each of us to have. But sometimes things get in the way. Sometimes it is something as simple as, and it's not so simple, but like, well, I'm keeping myself too busy to go to the ocean. So sometimes there's that. And other times there are things that are deeply rooted or more, a little more in our system and our patterning, our programming, whether it's, you know, a lot of times it's subconscious where we're not even aware of it right away. And then we sit with it. And then maybe something comes in at some point in a meditation. We're like, oh, that's part of this inner resistance. Or maybe it's something from the past that got stuck or lodged, where every time you bump up against a thing, it triggers you in a way to like hold back. And when we hold back, then we're not able to experience aliveness fully. And there's all different things that can make us hold back. There's all different things that can make us want to contract and feel resistant and blame out and want to just kind of bury ourselves. But then having maybe this webinar is that moment of, you know, where are you in the scheme of that and the spectrum of that? And when we're contracted and hiding and blaming, and sometimes we have no idea that we're even doing it or what to do about it. Just recognizing, having the awareness first that that is detracting from aliveness. And if you're not living, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. And that's part of life. That's the life cycle. We're born, we live, we die. And I think sometimes, to bring the word death in, I get a little like, ooh, do I say it? But that's the fact of life. Plants do the same, animals, creatures, and life is so precious. So I think there is sometimes that important piece when we talk about aliveness, to have this bothness of recognizing what's on the other side of it. And then in this spectrum, where are you? Are you moving more towards aliveness? Or are you moving more towards, kind of shrinking and shriveling and shying away from aliveness? So just asking yourself that for a moment. Have you been letting yourself stay more at that other end, which is, it's fine. It's all good. That's the truth in the moment, is that maybe you are feeling like a little, I don't even know how to step into what makes me feel alive. Like I want it. I feel the little spark of like, that's it. But I am actually shielding myself from aliveness. So we've just come through, we're not fully through this whole pandemic thing. And there's a lot loaded in that. So it could just be these last few years have made you be a certain way out of protection and survival. But I think sometimes if we're not totally aware of why are we doing the thing, it's real easy to almost be at the other end of the spectrum, where we started to protect ourselves in order to feel alive. But really now we've like buried a little bit of a hole for ourselves, and we're moving even more away from the aliveness. So letting this also be a moment, maybe this is the month where you're like, wait, hold on, life is happening. It's going to happen. And where am I? Where am I living? To what place on the spectrum of life am I living? Aliveness. So just getting really truthful with yourself and asking yourself, have you been letting yourself experience the beauty of life? Have you been shielding yourself out of maybe protection, which is important? Have you gotten into some patterns that you're like, yeah, I don't even know why I'm doing this, but for a few years, I've just been, this is where my mind has been, this is where my body has been. And so that's kind of this new thing. And that's how it works. That's how beliefs are formed. Thoughts are thought over and over as they are, most of our thoughts are repeated. They become beliefs. The grooves become so deep and just easier, just like that path that's well-traveled, so much easier to take that path. So our brain and our behaviors are doing the same thing. And then they get a little more like in us, they become us because we've just dug that groove so deep that it's easy to go to. So breakthrough moment for yourself here today. Are there any of those grooves that you want to get out of? Sure, it might be easier to just keep doing what you're doing, but is that path carrying you towards ultimate liveliness? Or is it just this easy route that's taking you somewhere and it's not even, you don't even know where, it's just easy. It's the comfort zone, which at times is important, but is this a month to get just a little outside the comfort zone for the sake of more life? So I'll hit pause on myself there and just reflecting for a moment. Yeah, how have you been showing up to your own life? How have you been showing up to aliveness? You have the data, you have the memories, you have the things that you love and you probably want to do because they do make you feel alive. And what if there were just those two choices of aliveness or deathness? I'm going to choose aliveness. So now we'll as we keep going here, we'll keep playing with, okay, how do we keep going that way? So if you need to list anything out, what's getting in the way lately? What's been keeping you back? Has it been resistance? Has it just been patterning? Maybe there's no clear answer. That's okay. Just having awareness first is huge. So at some point in the last year, one of my teachers put on like a webinar series. And at least for a couple of the weeks, the theme was like, what needs to die inside of me? What needs to die in my life so that the next thing can grow and bloom and have room? And so I say this just giving her a little respect for like she planted the seed. It took me months to really let that seed feel like it grew into this thing of like, oh, and even in the moment when she presented the question, I knew that part of it for me was like moving across the country, realizing I really, I needed to let go of who I was there. I mean, I had a whole different life there with teaching yoga specifically and being at the studio. It took me months to finally, I think it wasn't until April, May, even still now, it still feels like there's some kind of feathery, flaky things that are still shaking off. But, really understanding how much of like I was holding on to this idea that although it's something that made me feel alive, that past kind of memory thing needed to fizzle away so that I could fully receive this new life. So asking yourself, is there something that needs to die? Is there something that needs to, it doesn't mean you forget it and black it out of your memory, but is there something to kind of tie up and set aside or let shrivel and compost into the earth so that new seeds can be planted and grow in this moment? So reflecting on the last few years, the last few months, the whole last life you've had, is there something from your past that's keeping you in this perpetuated thing, this place, this maybe, 80% aliveness versus 100% aliveness? And from this, death, from this, releasing, composting, think of a banana peel. The banana, it grows, you eat it, you get the peel. It's like that remaining, you toss it in the compost. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to compost and it's going to become new earth, and the nutrients are going to go into the soil and it's going to be reused. So knowing too that, I just want to be sensitive around the word death, but there is that piece of just this like, the newness that can come from composting something that is really no longer needed so much, like the banana peel. So as you move through releasing, getting clear on even just some little hints, some little clues, little breadcrumbs that you might be getting now of, oh yeah, that I've been hanging on to that part of me or that part of my past or the past. And that is taking more energy, where it's like, imagine just like holding on and trying to preserve the banana peel. Like you really can't. Like, I just made this up. I don't know. I hope this is making sense, because I wasn't really thinking of talking about bananas and banana peels, but in a way, I think it is exactly what it is, because you can't, something so natural, which are cycles of life, just like a banana peel, like it's so natural, you can't preserve it forever, because time will still lapse and it's still going to move on. And this banana peel thing, it's like, it's going to eventually shrivel, compost, and release. And so the beautiful part of this whole thing is that new energy is freed and cleared. And so if you are a gardener or something, that like flower bed grower, digging up the soil, using some fertilizer and compost, using the past to then really make this fertile soil so that those seeds you plant can grow. And the seeds today that you're planting and growing are the things that are ultimate aliveness. So now going back to, can we hold both? It's like this syzygy thing, this loop of, yes, we can like talk about letting go in the past, and then we can dance over here to the future and aliveness and like vital energy. And then sure, go back and maybe check in with the things that are decomposing, and then go back to the things that are growing. So now let's go back to the things that are growing in your life. What do you want more of? What would it feel like to be 100+% alive? And when you think that, other things can come up of like when I just did that, maybe you do that in your body of like, yes, 100% alive. Oh, like something came in. And so using awareness of something's coming in of like, ooh, am I worthy of that? For me, it's like a worthy thing. Am I worthy of like that big aliveness? Am I a little scared? Is that a vulnerability thing? If like, can I let myself like actually feel the incredibleness, including just the intimacy of life, of feeling the highs and lows and all that life is? So sometimes aliveness can feel that big, and maybe there is a part of it that's like, like that. Yeah. So just thinking on that for a second, like the big, amazing life, like what's the big, amazing life? Because we each are equal. We each, when we get to the spiritual level of who we are, there is no hierarchy here. Like we are all just that same energy. We can all access the same stuff that we want, that we desire. We all have that. It's our birthright to like feel abundance and feel aliveness. And then because we're humans here in this moment, things come in and we might layer on these things of like what I shared, like some worthiness or some vulnerability issues. So just letting all that come to the surface for you today of like, yeah, big life, aliveness. I want more of it. And then that step forward into this might give you another little nugget of, ooh, okay, I want to work with this. I want to release this thing that's holding me back from feeling aliveness. And it could be more of this like inner stuff, like worthiness, resistance to vulnerability, fear of vulnerability. All this coming into, and we happen to be doing this on the coattails of a full moon, which also can be a good time to purge and release. It also can be a more intense time. And just knowing that depending on when you're watching this, there could be external things that are layering into your energy. And, in regards to aliveness, other things could be happening, could be a life situation, could be a moon phase, could be a season, it could be the weather. It's getting pretty hot all over the country. I feel like everywhere except here, 100 degrees can do things to a person. So just really knowing like there could be external stuff that will impact you. And then you still get to choose, how will you move closer to feeling more alive? This is all happening in your body. So I mentioned earlier, the mind-body connection, this kind of somatic piece of it all. So I want to take time here, depending on what you need, to rattle loose some of this stuff. So even just thinking about all these things and these prompts I'm giving could bring some stuff up. So if right now you need to move your body, kind of like an animal shaking it off, like a dog like tumbles, right? He gets up and he just kind of shakes. Like you have this same ability to get up and shake it off. So if you need to stand up and shake, or if you just need to like move your body around, the jaw might get tight at times. That's a place of contraction for a lot of people. Shoulders might start to feel just a little lifted. It's like get the shoulders down and wiggle your jaw around and stick your tongue out, like move it around a little bit, loosen the face, breathe, and just remembering that you've got this body, it's here, you're good. And so how do we move through these inner, like just these little blocks, these little things to break through so that we can have more aliveness? All different ways. Sometimes running and jumping in cold water could do wonders for just a little mini breakthrough of like shocking the system in an invigorating way. Maybe that's something that sounds like good for you. It could just be some movement. It could be going for a run. I've worked with people too, where they get that feeling inside where I just want to go. It's like, well, then go. And sometimes that's running away from something, and sometimes it's running to something. So it's good to just be aware of these feelings of like this calling to like just run. And ultimately it's like, does the body want to move some energy through it? Then like go. So maybe there's something like that in you right now of like, I want to go. I want to like go jump in a cold pool. I want to go jump in the cold ocean. I want to run. Maybe it is like sometimes sitting in a sauna. Like I'll go to the gym and spin a little bit, but like just sweating, or going to a hot yoga room where it's like 100 degrees. Not my favorite thing in the world, but sometimes just getting that sweat, that purge could help shift your physical state. So there's like that real physical component to all this. And then there's also just more of that kind of reflective piece of, maybe it's not in the body right now. Maybe your body's like, I'm good. I'm worn out. I just want to like sit here. But there's something you can chew on internally. So it all still comes back to the body, because this is your temple. This is your vehicle that you are moving through this life in. So all your life experiences are felt and experienced here. The one end of the spectrum of aliveness and the other end of the spectrum of aliveness. And so if things are getting stuck in the body, sure, like run, jump in the cold water, hot room, whatever. Or you can also just go through and do a very brief, basic somatic practice, but realizing you don't need to understand what's going on in the body, but there might be a feeling that you start to notice that maybe it feels like a little bit of resistance or stuckness, or you just have this intuitive thing of like, yeah, there's just something going on like here in my body. And just being with that in a connected, kind of slower paced environment, maybe like this, and listening to your body, slowing way, way down, can start to loosen up some of the tightened energy, nervous system stuff in your body, in your nervous system, specifically body. So that all being said, you can just witness this, or you can participate. It'll feel like a meditation. So landing back into your seat, you can have the eyes open or closed, and letting your feet feel the floor, letting your seat feel the floor. You can lean back if that would be comfortable, and just feeling like, okay, you're here again, shifting gears into this reflective place. Not much that you really need to hear or understand from me, just letting my words guide you through. And I'm going to close my eyes just because there's no one for me to really look at here other than my own screen. If you want to do this face to face sometime with me in person, I would be tracking what you're doing in your body. But right now it's just you and your safe space. So as you settle into your foundation, getting comfortable, taking a few breaths, and feeling the body temple, the body vehicle that you get to move through this life in. So you've got the mass body, like the actual physical body, skin, bones, muscles. Feel your body. And then you've got energy within your body that is your nervous system, the central nervous system, your brain, connecting everything in the body. And then there's still another kind of layer of energy within that. And so as you breathe and you feel into your body, you might notice your belly, feel your legs, always wiggle the toes, feel your feet. They're a good grounding place to go. And if you could kind of pump your inner brakes just a little bit and slow things down a little extra, especially if you know that you tend to move on the quicker side. And in a way, it's like watching paint dry. I forget who said that, but this type of experiencing, it's slow. So it might take a minute to feel, okay, I'm slowing down, still slowing down, slowing down. And when you ask yourself, just today in this specific experience, well, what makes me feel alive? And the answers that maybe came up earlier, maybe some new answers, and slowing down enough to feel it in your body of what makes you feel alive and just noticing it as feeling. You don't need to know anything more than just what does it feel like? Where do you feel in the body aliveness? And just realizing that that can be a good feeling, that aliveness. So for me in this one, when I feel it in my chest, it feels like an open kind of warmth in my chest, a little buzz of extra energy. Could be totally different for you. Now asking yourself, well, is there anything getting in the way of the idea of being alive, extra alive? Or where lately have you felt challenge or resistance? Could be a certain situation. Could be totally unrelated. Just go with the first answer that comes up. Where have you felt resistance or challenge lately? And it could be from years ago. It's okay if it's not totally now. Think and then feel resistance in your body. Challenge, a moment of challenge in your life, in your body. Notice what is happening. For me, I thought of a moment that was challenging and I could feel more tension rising up. I felt just a little frozen. So not that that's true to you, but just noticing, is it an overall feeling? Is there a certain place in your body where you feel a change? Does it feel like a certain texture or color? And just being with the feelings that come up in your body. Again, paint drying, slow. You might start to receive some signs that your body is softening a little bit. You might get a little rumble in the belly or let out a sigh. Sometimes tears well up for no specific reason that you need to know, just letting things start to shift and be released. Slowing down. Going into the feeling if sensation came up in that thought of challenge. And then maybe going back to the thought of what makes you feel alive. Noticing that feeling in the body. Maybe it's the same as before. Maybe something new is coming in. Slowing down. Does not need to make conscious cognitive sense. It's like, what feels alive in my body? What sensations, feelings are there? Colors, textures. And then going back to what feels challenging, the feeling in the body that might come up when you think of a challenging time. Noticing when you slow down, if things change, even just like 1/2 degree, like, oh, that feeling feels a little different. Maybe it's a little smaller. Maybe something that felt a little stuck or frozen now feels a little more thawed. Slow things down. Notice if any part of you is getting ahead of another part of you. Slow things down. Breathe. And you can stay in this experience. You can stay with what makes you feel alive or good, maybe more expansive in the body. You can pendulate between the two a few more cycles if that's interesting and is helping to move some energy in the body. Like, what feels challenging? How does that feel in the body? Okay, what feels open and comforting in the body? And no rush at all. But if it feels like it's time to come back to the virtual space, whether you wiggle the feet, toes, feel the floor, feel your seat, wiggle the fingers, and look around. If your eyes are opening up, look around the room. Don't look at the computer or the screen right away. And just notice where your eyes land. And again, stay in that slow. Well, for some people, it could be like painfully slow. It's like, slow down. Because when we're in this overdrive, that's our sympathetic, that's our stress response in the body. It's like, how do we tap into slow in a safe space? It's like right now, my eyes are landing on this red ukulele on the wall. It's always there, but I don't always look at it. So then I might be like, yeah, wow, okay, I just like looking at the color, like the shapes. So looking around your space, you might see something that you never saw before in your own home or in your own space. And so that's another tool of shifting back to the present, looking around. So this is where the life and the aliveness really happens, is this life right here, this life that you have in this body, and then also in the space that you're in. So not that there's a need to dissect or discuss any of that, but that was just a little sample of, although it might have felt like meditation, if you were letting yourself go into what feelings are actually in the body and just feel at that slowest level. That's your nervous system, that's your subtle body, that's your energy body. And that's where oftentimes the things that are keeping us from our joy and our liveliness and aliveness are getting lodged. You remove the immediate physical things. Like for me, it could have just been, I just need to pull the car over and go to the ocean. And so that was almost more of a like, just do it sort of thing. But if I did that and then still felt like I was holding myself back, oftentimes it does get to this thing of like the resistance is inside, and how do we free it so that you can feel alive? So that all being said, just wanting to wrap this up with, then what will you do with freed energy / how else can you free energy? And so thinking for yourself, whether that practice was helpful for you or gave you just a little taste of like, oh yeah, there's something going on in there. And you can always reach out to me and share. Let me know if you have questions, or normally that would take 30 minutes to over an hour if needed. So it's a process that can help clear the things that will make you feel literally more alive. And that's what I'm personally really enjoying about this work, is that it's about healing, but it's about living. It's about getting on the other side of healing, having that breakthrough so that you can have more life, you can have more vitality and really reclaim some energy and power so you can really savor like the beautiful stuff in this life. So you can do something like that we just did. Maybe you dance, maybe you use sound. Maybe right now you forget about what I'm saying and you go put your favorite song on and dance around the room, or just listen to your favorite song. Be any song, like in the whole scheme of songs. Anything that makes you feel good can also help recalibrate, shake out. If you dance around, move your body. Even if you don't think you dance, like we all can move and dance. Think of babies, think of yourself when you were just like 1 or 2 learning how to move and, like moving to the beat, and just that innate feeling of Like, yeah, you can move, you can shift. It doesn't need to make sense. So using sounds, using movement, using even things that you like to look at that can make you feel like alive. I know I'm using the word a ton, partly because that's our theme is aliveness. But example, I got this water bottle. I love this color yellow. It looks a little kind of faded in the screen, but it's like this bright, I think that the name of it was pineapple. When I look at this color and look at my water bottle, there's something that I just get this little like, ooh, yeah, like I love that color. And of course, yellows, oranges are also, energizing colors. So even thinking of things that you look at and that just give you those little sparks and just give you, it's kind of like just connecting the wires for a second of like, ooh, yeah, aliveness. Ooh, yeah, aliveness. Ooh, I love that song. I'm going to turn it up for the 3 minutes that the song is. Ooh, yeah, I'm going to get that little, like that little buzz. So I also believe that, you can kind of forget about everything else I've said and also just move towards these little moments in your day that will connect the wires and just give you that little zap to help you like feel alive. So what can you listen to? What can you move and do in your body? What can you look at? So we've got our senses that let us experience life. So sound, sight, what about smells and tastes? And it could literally be today something you're like, oh, now that we're talking about being alive and things that I really enjoy, I really want like a smoothie bowl or something like that. Like that comes up for me. So it's like, oh yeah, I want that. Go towards the things that you want. You deserve the things. And sure, you can be like, well, I'm spending $20 a day on like smoothies and coffees. That's like my current story. Like, oh man. So sure, there's like a time to like, be, okay, hold on. You don't need to like go spend $10 on a coffee every day or a smoothie, but maybe that's what it is for you once a week. What are you holding yourself back from when ultimately like money doesn't matter because the feeling is so worth the value of it. And maybe we'll have some money stuff in the future if that comes in. I didn't mean to even go into that, but notice like for me, that's something that will hold me back from experiencing something that in the moment would actually make me feel extra alive. Like, ooh, that I would love to feel that like and taste that and smell that right now. Just go do it. Go do it. I think that the reward is definitely worth like the risk or whatever, but then of course, everything in spectrum and, good balance and measure. So maybe it's something to smell or taste. Maybe it's something you have at home. Maybe it's an oil or a candle that you're like, ooh, I smell that. And it just like is connecting the wires, like little spark of joy, feel good, aliveness. Okay. So I want to kind of leave it at that. And in conclusion, just feeling, this big question of what makes you feel alive? Do what makes you feel alive? Well, what does that even mean? And are you doing it? So we can have both. We can really honor and scale through things that need to compost so that we can feel alive. And it might be this for a little bit. And you can even do this with your hands. And this can help with like, oh yeah, I can like be over here. I can be over here, be over here, be over here. And eventually, just like what we did in that little practice, feel contraction, feel challenge, and then feel joy, feel aliveness, and then move towards the aliveness. What's getting in the way of you moving towards the aliveness, whether it's joy, expansion, feel good, what is that for you? And just keep heading in that direction, especially with the longer days, that natural energy that comes with more sunlight. And again, it's like this life, like it's that quickly. Life is going to keep going. So even when we feel stuck, it's like, well, life's still happening. Time's still going by. So how can you make the most of this time for yourself? And I think it's aliveness, like all the way. So if you have any follow-up questions or things, reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't know if Terry's still with us, April, how you're doing over there, Gary.
I'm here. Put me back up, Gary. I just wanted to chime in. We're all chatting together in the chat. Dee came on, so she's participating too. So Terry had mentioned early on that what makes him feel alive is making art, traveling, connecting with loved ones, trying new experiences, and personal improvement. Dee said performing, being creative in any way, playing with friends and others, traveling. She said traveling twice, I think. Learning new things, exploring, storytelling, connecting with others. There's a lot of connection here that makes people feel alive, which I love. And she said dancing.
Yeah.
And let's see what other things. Dee had also mentioned that personal blocks, I guess for her, are basically time and money. Taking care of family takes a lot of time. And I always worry about taking time away from family and spending money instead of saving. Gary said he could totally relate with that. I can relate with that as well. She also said walking around barefoot on the grass in her backyard became her favorite feeling alive thing to do over lockdown. So yeah, so it's, I was sitting here, you know, just listening to you about this whole like energy shift and I'm, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, feeling very much that there is this wave of like, oh my God, I'm like ready to just like be out there and how I used to be. I mean, I think a lot of people know me as like very much on social media, like happy to share. And I've kind of like clamped all that down. And I think it was this morning where I was like, maybe I can start posting on social media again, which is, you know, something I probably don't have time to do, but it was just the fact that I was even thinking like, maybe I want to post something and just share that like I've got good energy now that I can spread instead of this like, hold on, I'm cleaning my house energy. So I just loved it. But it was like, this is so relevant to what I need right now. And I'm sure that everybody who is checking this out, you know, a lot of the, you know, I know Dee is going to be in Portland as well. Like there's a lot of energy that is coming up in the next week for many of us, and, you know, a good handful of people who are in the ASC. So that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah,
So,
connection. Lots of that.
Lots of connection.
Lively connection.
All those hugs and high fives will be what makes us feel alive.
Yeah.
Love this.
Good. Thank you for sharing, and thank you everybody for sharing and participating. And yeah, there's kind of this, and I don't want to go too into like nervous system stuff, but there's like this thawing out, I think, that happens too when we start to feel just that inner ease, the joy, like those emotions can help. So if we go to like this emotional frequency scale where like joy, happiness, gratitude are these upward ones, the fear, the worry, the doubt are the downward ones. So like when things start to feel a little better externally and we can start to feel like, ooh, I'm actually kind of leveling up a little bit emotionally, I think this like kind of thawing, and then we were able to be like, oh, maybe I can post on, maybe I can take action again, and something like social media posting. But if we're in these other places, like it can be hard to do the things that sound so simple when we say them, but it's a real thing to just be a little lodged up of just not feeling like you have the space to do even like a social media post. Yeah. Of course, there's so much that can be loaded in that of like the vulnerability and like showing up and being visible. And at the same time, it could just be a post of just taking action on something. But yay. Well, I look forward to seeing what you have to share when you're ready to share it.
Yeah. And I think it's also important too that, you know, if you're not feeling in these times where you feel alive, that it's not, you know, necessarily wrong, right? I mean, I think sometimes you need to go through those resistance pieces, and mine was like a 2-year resistance. I mean, maybe I wasn't showing it because I was like literally trying to conserve all of my energy to like show up in front of people. But like, I just felt like, you know, I was almost kind of beating myself up. Like I should be farther along, right? I need to get out of this funk. But like, that was almost applying even more pressure. And so like kind of sitting with it, and just knowing, but making sure that you're doing the right things to take care of yourself. Like a lot of what you shared about, you know, just paying attention to where your energy is and being in that reflective space so that you could at least facilitate yourself to this place eventually if you're not there right now. I think, you know, we have to have that ebb and flow, and that it's understandable. And, you know, of course we don't want to sit there too long, but sometimes trying to resist being in those like stuck positions, sometimes you just have to embrace it so that you can then let it go a little bit faster. At least that's what I feel, right? You agree?
Yeah, so important. I mean, it's like grieving is so crucial to fully let go. So it doesn't always just go from like, I'm just going to turn the lights on and go. It's like, sometimes there's that middle place, and it could last for years for people. And it's, yeah, I definitely agree with you honoring that. There's still like that piece that pops in of like what you resist persists. So it's like having awareness around just, if there are things that you can change them. But if you're just feeling like, no, this is actually where I need to be, then definitely honoring that, like you can still feel alive and be healing and just tending to, no, I'm just like, this is where I'm at, you know, and that's where I wanted to make sure to mention this. It's okay to be over here and know that somehow you might tease it, but it's all right if it feels like one day you're like ready and the next day you're like, But yeah, we each are so unique in our needs and where we are in life. And
100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Super,
cool.
super
Well, I hope that
awesome.
made sense to everyone. Just thought I'd have a little different approach to the webinar this month. Just giving some tools to
I
reflect,
love it.
check in, and versus being, more info, which is always good, but just hit the pause button and
No, and I think that that's the role that you play in our community. I mean, I think in a community of people who aspire to be high performers and want to do, have aspirations to do things that make them, make them feel alive and make them feel fulfilled, but also, have this sense of accomplishment. We have to stay in tune with our bodies and our minds, and have that opportunity to like take that step back and reflect from that angle. And I think that you do that beautifully here. It's kind of almost challenging the structure that we all are trying to. I mean, and I think that's that for myself too. Like I'm a very structured person when I want to be, and sometimes I can do it to a fault. And so making sure that there's like, hey, let's let it be a little bit flowy. Like nothing has to be completely put in a confined box. And I think that has changed my productivity, like knowing somebody like you who has, I mean, you are productive on your own too, but it's also you bring this flavor that I think this community definitely needs. So I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I hope so. I hope that's.
Oh yeah. No, you gotta know so. You gotta know so, girl. But anyways, I think we're up on our time and want to get everybody back to life. But we wanted to thank you guys for tuning in on this amazing webinar about our theme of aliveness and really, really focusing on doing what makes you feel alive. We will start a new theme here in half a month. We actually are in the process of identifying what that might be, have some ideas. But if you are watching this and you're like, I really need to focus on this thing right now, and the ASC hasn't covered it, or you're just curious about certain things, like feel free to put some ideas in the chat. We're always open because, these webinars are meant to serve you, but also give you either some sort of informational or personal growth focused content that can help you, personally grow, one day at a time. And so anything that you have, we're here to serve you. If you are watching this webinar and you're like, what is the Accountability Success Circle, or the ASC, which is what we typically say, we are a community that is focused on helping people accomplish their goals and dreams that make them feel fulfilled and joyful. But we want to also make sure that we do it in the most fun way possible. So it's a good blend of working hard and playing harder, and we're all just coming together as a community to support each other on our own personal endeavors, whether it be professional or personal. And if you want to check us out, we're at www.accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. Come hang out with us. Come check us out. There's always a free trial going on to check out what the community is up to, and we would love to have you and support you in whatever you're doing. So with that said, and I'm sure that Gary is waving from behind the camera, but the three of us as the leadership team, thank you so much for watching, whether you're in the ASC, out of the ASC, watching it on YouTube, or watching it through the ASC, whatever, watching it live. Dee and Terry, thank you so much for showing up live. We will see you next month with a new theme and new yummy, good learnings for your future. So see you later. Oh, there's Gary. He says hello. And I will end the stream right now. Okay. Yay.